How do great action scenes feel so intense so quickly? They have to skyrocket our adrenaline, immerse us in the moment at hand, and help us relate to the character's emotions in the moment. And the hardest part? They've only got a few opening sentences to do that in, if they want that high-octane moment to start with a bang. Today we'll be going over some of my favorite writing techniques so that you too can have a whopping good start to your action scene. We'll look at Sarah Holmes because she rocks at this. Sarah Holmes can drop us into any action scene without missing a beat. So let's look at a scene that would be challenging for any author. We'll look at the first scene of her Avengers fanfiction, I'll Keep You Safe Here With Me. When this scene starts off, we don't know whose point of view we're in, much less what's going on. But as you'll see, Sarah Holmes finds a way to use that disorientation to her advantage. In this case, I'm going to give you the whole first paragraph all at once. The lights are blinding. He can barely see a thing through the glare that has lit them up, open and exposed. The white circle pins them in place, the thudding of the helicopter above their heads reverberating through his chest. People are bellowing at them, telling him to get down, to lower his weapon. Sirens are wailing. The rain continues to fall, a mist visible in the bright lights that are pointing mercilessly at them. This action scene can't afford to be bogged down by the weight of lengthy descriptions. And yet we still got enough information to visualize some of what's going on, understand some of what's going on, and connect to the emotions of the character that's experiencing it. Now that's a very efficient paragraph. Now how do you achieve that efficiency? Precision in word choice. Let's start by talking about adjectives. Adjective choice can 1. Establish the general vibe of a scene, 2. Establish the reader's impression of a situation, and 3. Establish a character's mindset. Sarah Holmes deftly uses her adjectives here to do all 3 of those things. 1. She establishes an air of drama. 2. She builds up an impression of overwhelm. And 3. She reveals her character's desperation. Let's look at the adjectives that she used in this paragraph. Blinding, open, exposed, bright. You almost don't need verbs in this paragraph. The adjectives will get you there. Especially the adjective exposed. That's the primary emotion and experience here, and it's given to us right away, and at the end of its sentence, where it'll hit with the strongest impact. I'll show you what I mean. Let's look at a sentence that switches the place of the words open and exposed. He can barely see a thing through the glare that has lit them up, exposed and open. Now let's look at the verb choice. There's a bunch of them here, and they all add up to the character's experience. Pins, reverberating, bellowing, wailing. These are strong verbs, but more importantly, they all do a double duty. They tell us what is happening and a little bit more. With the word pins, we learn that their location has been highlighted, so not only do we get information on what is happening, we also get what the character is feeling about it. The second is reverberating in his chest. That verb choice gives us a ton of information about the noise level, not to mention the fact that it's oscillating in some way and that there's a vibrating sensation of it in the character's physical body. But more than that, it also gives us a lot of information about how close that helicopter must be. The third is bellowing, not shouting. Bellowing gives you as loud as you can get in a deep sound. It's often only associated with men's voices, not women's, and it gives us a further clue, which is that it has a feeling of urgency to it. Finally, wailing. Wailing isn't just loud, it's also high-pitched. It gives us the impression that this isn't a bomb siren with that really low hum. It's a high-pitched police car siren or an ambulance siren. That extra information helps build the picture of what else is in this scene. And also, that wailing word sounds desperate. So it gives us an emotional experience and an impression of this being a desperate situation. So it's not just loud, not just high-pitched, but also desperate. Do you see how all of the verbs here pull a double duty? They're also all on the extreme end of their meaning. That reduces the need for description, and it also adds to the drama of this moment. Goal 1, add an air of drama, achieved. Now let's check out the verb tense happening here. People are bellowing, not people bellow. Sirens are wailing, not sirens wail. Why? Well, let's check it out if we put this whole paragraph in the present simple. People bellow at them, telling him to get down, to lower his weapon. Sirens wail. The rain continues to fall, a mist visible in the bright lights that point mercilessly at them. These things happen one at a time, and we can digest them one at a time. They don't stack the same way, because we're not told they're all happening continuously and simultaneously. Instead, Sarah Holmes manages to build an impression of overwhelm by putting all of her verbs in the present continuous. One thing is happening, and another thing is happening, and another thing is happening, and they all feel constant, like there's no way to make them stop. Goal 2, build an impression of overwhelm, achieved. There's 2 more really interesting things that are happening in this opening scene. Let's look at this line. People are bellowing at them, telling him to get down, to lower his weapon. Now this line tells us a couple things. He's armed and he's doomed. But how do we know that he's absolutely outnumbered? Here's the deal. Sarah Holmes has a distinct challenge here because her protagonist is Clint Barton, aka Hawkeye, aka the man who never misses. If you're not familiar with the Avengers fandom, just suffice it to say that her protagonist is a superhero, and eventually in reading her fanfiction, we're gonna figure that out. So she needs to make us feel like this is a situation where he'll definitely lose, but it's pretty tough, given that it's hard to make us not feel like he at least has a shot. He's the man who never misses. She also doesn't want to get this narrative bogged down by describing all of the advantages that the opponent has and trying to prove it to us that he's doomed. So here's what she does. We're not given the number of people aiming at him. This is a neat trick. If you ever want to establish that your character cannot win in a fight, despite their superpower or their guile or their genius, try this technique. Never fully establish the strength of the opponent. Why does that work? Well, let's look at what would happen in this scene if it were 14 people aiming at him. The white circle pins them in place, the thudding of the helicopter above their heads reverberating through his chest. 14 people are bellowing at them, telling him to get down, to lower his weapon. It's interesting because it establishes Clint Barton's awareness of the situation and also some of his superhero skills. But it also makes you feel like you're about to see a fight scene where it blows them all away and starts counting down from 14 through the whole thing, which really reduces the feeling of desperation in this moment that Sarah Holmes is aiming for. So keep that in mind as a trick if you're ever writing super powerful people. It remains helpful even with the moderately competent, but it's especially potent when you're dealing with a character that could reasonably take on 14 armed people by themselves. At that point, it's better just to leave the entire opposition force vague. Goal 3, establish a character's desperation, achieved. Now, I told you there were 2 interesting things here, and I saved this one for the last because it is my favorite. Here it is. Everything that's not here. This is a paragraph designed to be dramatic, and yet everything that's the most dramatic about it isn't described at all. The helicopters and the soldiers pointing guns are faceless. We only really know about them because of the sensory experience that we receive. We know about the noise, we know about the vibration, we know about their voices. That makes this impression of what's going on, but more importantly, an emotional impression of what it feels like, both in our bodies and also in the overwhelm and desperation of the situation. Everything else is up to us to interpret. We can try to figure out that where the helicopter is, that it's close by while we're feeling trapped. And we can figure out that they're probably soldiers or cops pointing at us, but we don't exactly know. That lack of information means that we're really curious and desperate to find out more information about what's going on. Which means when Sarah Holmes is ready to continue this action scene and give us the rest of what happens, we are clamoring for that information. That is a beautifully done beginning to an action scene that drops us right in. Here's how to make these techniques work for you. Pick dramatic adjectives that fit the tone you're looking for. Pick strong verbs that indicate force, speed, and intensity. Choose words with helpful connotations to cut down on description. Don't name the number of opponents if you don't want to give your superhero the chance to succeed. Give a few brushstrokes of what's happening based in the character's experience of it rather than the full truth of what's going on when you start your scene, to force the reader to imagine the scene and experience it for themselves. And if you're wondering, what about the kissing parts? Never fear, romance writers, I would never skip the kissing parts. In fact, that is the subject of our next lesson, how to develop a powerful romance. I'll see you there. Happy writing!